The Martin House was originally built in 1728 on land that had been purchased in 1715 by John Martin the Younger for his wife and 8 children. So the original house was only 1 room, and it's right about, do you see where the window is? Maybe a few feet over, that's about how big the house was, loft above it, and that's where everyone would stay. So if you look on the ground, there is the foundation. These rocks were all found plowed in the fields right behind you, and this is still the original foundation from 1728. So a lot of houses in the area were believed to have something called spirit bottles inside of it. And what these would do is these would trap the bad spirits and it wouldn't enter the house. So we don't know if Martin House has one because it's still intact from when it was first there. If you look on the bottom floor, the windows are 8/8 and the top floor is 12/12. This is because shipping smaller panes of glass was more efficient than shipping larger panes. The shipping industry would ship them from England over the Atlantic to New England, and that's how the Martins would get their glass. Right above the door, there's 5 panes of something called bullseye glass. This was the least expensive form of glass. It had a little bit of a defect in it, but most people thought of it as kind of like a show off kind of cool glass. So it was originally a Cape style house with an L, and that is about it. Are we ready to go inside?
Yeah.
All right.
The original 1-room house. None of these chairs are original, but it is very similar to what they had. As long as it got the job done, it was fine. So this is a Portuguese bulb stretcher. This is a leather back. That is a ladder back. Those 2 are banister backs. This is a Windsor style. And this is a 3-corner chair where the soldiers sat more comfortably, or the women sat with their hoop skirts. Each chair has a piece of nature. This has pumpkins, acorns, mushrooms, and has hooves on the bottom. So there's a summer beam that goes across. You can see the original beam over here if you come over here. The kids slept in a loft. Why do you think they would sleep in a loft?
Hotter?
Yeah, heat rises. So they would sleep up there while the parents or adults just slept down here on probably a pull-out bed.
These are courting candles. You would have the daughter and her date sit there with the father in the middle. The father could higher or lower the candle if he liked the male, and when the candle reached here, he had to leave. This is a pair of spectacles that the whole family shared. Since they were very expensive, they fit each family member by extending. This is a horn book. This is where they learn to read, write, and pray. This is a wick trimmer that catches the wick inside. They would use it to trim the candles frequently because they were scared of fires happening.
And these pipes are a sign of hospitality to their visitors. So each time they would use it, they would break off the end part that they used so it would be fresh. This one has a red dot on it. People with smallpox would use that one so they wouldn't contaminate the other ones.
That's King Philip's chair. He sat there and warned Mr. Cole about the upcoming war between the Indians and the settlers. Mr. Cole took that information and took his boat off and realized his house was on fire.
Cold, like Cold River? That one?
Yeah. If you look down at the floorboards, they're very wide. They're the width of the tree that they are taken from. They did that because it was easier to be shipped and easier to lay down. And I think that's it for this room. Yeah. So we move into this room here. So this is the first addition to the original 1-room house. It's called a full tester bedroom because this goes fully around the bed to preserve as much heat as they could. Since they only bathed once or twice a year, they would keep spices at the top so it wouldn't smell bad. The mattress is made of hay, and before they would go to bed every night, they would hit it to make the bugs scatter and to fluff up the hay. That's where you get the phrase, hit the hay and don't let the bed bugs bite.
This pulls out at the bottom to have one of the children sleep in. Okay, so this is a bed wrench, and they would use it to tighten it, which is where you get the expression sleep tight.
That's it for this room. So this is the next room. This is the third addition to the one-room house. So this is the half-tester bedroom. It's called a half-tester because the tester only goes halfway around the bed. They need to preserve as much heat because this room has a fireplace. This is a deerskin chest, which they kept their clothes in, while they kept their bed sheets in their wardrobe. So it's opposite of what we do today. They would spin it and they would make it into a spool of flax, and they would have a weasel on the top right here. And once the spool was full, the weasel would pop, and that's where you get the phrase, "Pop goes the weasel." Behind, over here, you have a bed warmer, which was filled with hot coals and would be quickly passed across the bed to warm the bed, but it was quickly because they didn't want to cause a fire because they were very devastating, because help was very far. This is a hatchel, which before they would make it string, they would brush it through. They dyed it using crushed berries or dead bugs. You guys can touch that if you want. On the wall, there's King George III and Queen Charlotte. They're on the wall because this room was built before the American Revolution, so they were still under the rule of England. This pattern you will see throughout the tour, so keep that in mind. And then go into the kitchen.
So this is where they used like all their cooking stuff after the parlor wasn't needed anymore for cooking. And then this is called the trencher bowl. So they would keep most of their main meals inside of here, and they just serve it with a skimmer. They give it to the family, and they'd also scrape off animal fat before serving. It would come right off. And then this is a scrubber. It was used right after the meal was done. Can you tell me what these are?
Those
Cutters, knives.
Yes.
for like dough?
Yeah, so these are called choppers. And as you can see, there's multiple different kinds. And they were used for just regular like chopping things, like just like knives today. And then these are two different types of tea. Can you tell me which one's more expensive?
More expensive, probably the block.
Yes. So this was the time of the American Revolution, and this was actually taxed tea. So Britain would tax the American colonists using this stamp, which was how you knew that it was taxed.
Okay.
And to revolt against that, as boycotting, they take gunpowder tea, and it got its name from it tasting so bad that it tasted like gunpowder. So it was not very good. They maybe made it out of the motor pestle, where they would place like corn and herbs inside, and they push it right up to get fine powder or other things. But for right now, this is just, it's not really fine powder, it's just regular tea. And to make it sweeter, they take this, which is actually brown sugar, and they grind it up, and then they place the sugar behind their teeth. So that's where you got the term sweet tooth from. It'd make the tea sweeter. One more time. Yeah. Did you do this yet? Nope. No? Okay. So the Martins did not want to waste any material that they had. So they would take their gourds or squash and they would eat it. And then once they were done with it, they had 63 acres of farmland. So the men didn't want to be coming back and forth throughout the fields and back here. So what they did is they took their squash and they filled it with gravel and water, and they would mix it around just like that, and they would empty it out, and then it would become hollow like this. And so the adults would fill it with alcohol or water, and then they would just take it to the fields with them as a water bottle, so they didn't have to be coming back and forth. Do you guys know what these are?
Oh, well, I call them gourds, but
Well, they're shaky.
oh,
It was a
like,
toy.
like maracas.
So these are baby rattles for the baby.
Oh,
So the mother would give it to the
genius.
baby so that when they were cooking, she didn't really have to attend to them that much.
Yeah.
So this is a replica, and it didn't have this design on it, but I believe around 1740-ish, that's just a number I'm making up, but I believe that's when they started finding the red clay in the fields, and then they decided to make bowls and cups out of it so they didn't just have to eat out of the trencher. And in this bowl, there's usually soap. There's not any in it today. But to make the soap, what you would combine is water, ash, and lye. So the ash would actually burn their skin, so they put the lye in so that way it doesn't burn it. and they would just use that for everyday use, washing their hands, washing their redware, and that is what they would use.
Before we move on, I also forgot, this is baker's chocolate, and it was very bitter back then. It's not like the sweet chocolate today you would see, like Hershey's, and they'd use it just for baking. It's a lot more fancy.
Yeah.
Did you do more?
Yes, I did. Okay. All right, now we're going to move on to the mantle. So, do you guys know what this is? So this is a toaster. So the woman had very flammable dress, just like this, that went all the way to the ground. So they wanted to stay as far away from the fire as they could. So they would take their toast or their bread and they put it in. They put it in the fire, making sure to stay clear of it. They would do it on both sides, and then it would become toast. And that is how they made it. So during the 1700s, 1800s, and even into the early 1900s, Sunday services were almost mandatory for everyone. So they didn't do anything but go to church services. So they couldn't make their bread on Sundays. So they made it on Wednesdays and Saturdays in this thing called a beehive oven. So what they would do is they would put the bread inside of it and coals underneath, and it would rise and it would cook evenly throughout. Right here we have something called a Dutch oven. These are still used today. So you put your stuff inside of it and then you put hot coals on top, and it allows for you to cook. Right here is something called a tin reflector oven. So if you look inside, it was a little bit shinier than that, but that's like what it was. And it kind of worked just like a rotisserie would today. So you see the holes on the side. They would put their meat or whatever they wanted through a skewer, and they put it right through. And then the heat and the light would reflect off of this panel right here to allow for an even cook. So you don't even have to like turn it. Right here is an iron crane. So again, the woman did not want to catch on fire. This is stuck. The women didn't want to catch on fire, so they would stay clear from that. So right here are two hooks. These are called S hooks, and these are kind of like today's temperature gauges. So if they wanted to have a longer cook time or a lower temperature, they would use the smaller one. And if they wanted a faster cook time, they would use the bigger one. Right here we have something called Betty lamps, and that's short for better lamps. And what they would do is, instead of wasting a whole candle and just going to the bathroom, they fill it with pig's fat, not the type you'd use for cooking, and a wick, and they would take it, light it, and they would just walk around with that, and that would be their light, and it would burn out pretty quickly. Right here we have gunpowder horns. This is what they would fill their gunpowder with, so that way they could easily pour it into the musket. And this is the original Martin family musket, and it has the lock, stock, barrel, and bayonet on it. And it was put up that high so that way only the oldest son and the father could reach it. Right here we have a Martin House original mousetrap. These are the only two things original to the Martin House. No, that's not a real mouse, that's a fake one, that's for show. And it kind of worked like a guillotine. It would chop the mouse's head off, and it would just, bye-bye mousey. And that was actually found in the attic around the 18th century. Yes. Right here we have another candle wick trimmer, and right here is a bullet hole. So what they would do is they would open it and they would fill it with lead, they would close it, let it set, and that's what they would use for their muskets. And then right here, finally, this is a foot warmer. So Sunday services lasted all day, and it got really cold, especially in the winter. So the women would put it underneath their dresses, and that's how they would keep warm.
I forgot. This was candle molds, and they would place different types of wax in it, maybe like beeswax or regular wax. And they'd place it inside and put the wick right down under this thing, as you can see here. And when it got smaller, that's how you know it would be ready. And they placed this under here because mouse would often try to nibble on the wick. So they placed it under there so they could protect it. This is a butter churn, and we have two larger ones over here, maybe for bigger batches. Would you like to put a little bit on this one? And they would take it, and they'd churn the butter. The smell would be very awful, so they had to make sure the lid stayed down. And this would maybe be the job of the second oldest, and it was very like multitasking. They would take the baby, and they would rock the baby while churning the butter. And this would take a really long time. And then this was also a large skimmer. And inside of here they would store white sugar because that was very expensive back in the olden days. The wife would wear a key around her neck so the children and maybe other people who got into the house could not reach the white sugar. So that is it for the kitchen. You can go upstairs, and as you go upstairs, make sure to count the steps because we will be going future into the decade.
How many stairs did you guys count?
10.
So 10 years, 10 stairs. That's 100 years have passed now. We're now in the 1800s.
The American Revolutionary War is done. George Washington is president. And yeah, everything's.
So this is a lantern that they would use. They would take it to go to the outhouse during the night. It was poked outwards so the wind and the bugs could not enter to diffuse the flame. This emblem is a family emblem, so when you're outside you see the family emblem glowing and you know which family it is. This is not the Martin family emblem, but it's very similar to what we think the Martin family emblem would have been. We also have the fire bucket. This is not the Martin one as well, but it's from the same time period and the same area. And it was used if a neighbor was having a fire, there wasn't fireplaces close, so you'd take this bucket and you'd go and you'd help them out the fire. They'd use water brigades to the house to help diffuse it quickly if it was very far from the water. And they just use this so you see the family name and they'd be like, oh, this family helped me, I have to help them now. It's like an honor system. You help them, they help you. You want to explain the boxes?
These are bin boxes. So it's basically storage for clothes. During the summer, the winter clothes would go in the boxes, and during the winter, the summer clothes would go in the boxes.
If you guys want to follow me, we'll go into our first bedroom. So they use these as decorations when they're finished because they were such pretty prints. These are German prints on the bottles. They just use them as we saw downstairs with the rocking chair. They used to recycle things because to save money and just why not? Over here is a sampler written by a child in the 1812. There's 4 mistakes in the sampler if you guys want to try to find the mistakes.
Heavenly.
Heavenly is spelled wrong, that is one of them. Every is spelled wrong, that's one of them.
How many mistakes are there?
There's 4, so there's one more down here and one more up here.
Oh, okay. August?
The T in August, yep, so there's one more up at that top.
Well, there's no 9.
Yep, that's all the mistakes. They make these mistakes to show that the only perfect being was God. So they purposely make mistakes on their samplers just to prove that they weren't perfect.
Oh, goodness.
Over here we have the Indian print on this chair. They usually have the same print on the bedding, but since the bedding was in such rough condition, it is replaced. But this is a winged chair to keep the heat out so the makeup wouldn't melt off since it was made of wax. They'd give them a pale complexion just to show that they have higher wealth, because back in the day, paler meant higher wealth. So you would try to hide your tans from working out on the farm and all that. As you saw downstairs, these are wick cutters, but they're fancier. These are made out of brass, and they're of higher quality since they have more wealth. They'd be used for the same purpose as the ones downstairs, to cut the wick to make sure the ash or the fire didn't spark up when you were sleeping at night. Do you have any questions about this room?
No, it's very big, and I was surprised at the size of it. But like
So
you
that's
said,
a full
it's-
tester bed, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Follow me to the next room, the Empire bedroom over here.
So as you walk in, you notice a rocking chair here. The woman of the house, or just the woman, would usually just sit in the rocking chair. She'd want to get close to the fire, but she didn't want her makeup to melt, like the wax on her face, because it would melt. So this is called a screen, and it would help protect the woman to shield her face from all the heat that's coming from the fireplace.
This fireplace is a Benjamin Franklin fireplace, and as you can see, it points out, which will allow the heat to evenly distribute throughout the room. And on top of the fireplace is a dowry, which is a wedding gift, and the dowry would show which season you were married in, and so this one would be fall.
Over here, there's 2 types of hair. There's the human hair, that's the wig, and then there is the horse hair. The horse hair was more cheaper, so it's easier to come by, so more average people were into horsehair wig. As you notice, this is a lot bigger from our combs. This is the tortoiseshell comb. People would use it just to comb through the wigs or comb through your actual hair. Another dowry over here are the pins. So
Where would they get the human hair?
Probably just from
Because somebody has long hair and
If they'd have a haircut, they'd cut the hair and they'd use it to
From
make
live
the wigs.
people?
they do that today.
Yeah?
So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
people might have donated it. But this is, the pins were actually the dowry, like a wedding gift, because the pins were more expensive and hard to get to. But the cushion, they were easier to get to, easier to make. Over here, the beds. So the bedspread. These could also be dowries. I'm pretty sure that this is Indian print. So this is let's say the bride's family want to give that the dowry, and the groom's family give that as dowry. But as you move down here, this is the letterbox. So the letterbox would usually be used by the man, and he would just use the like on a hard surface. He would just like he had this. So he would. This is a snake skin eyeglass case. So there is only one pair of eyeglasses. So they would just like store them here for transportation. So the daughter, there's like a little secret compartment. So the daughter would use this compartment for letters for like a boy or like family members that she didn't want anyone to see because she thought they were private. I mean, it wasn't really private, it was pretty obvious. But she thought she was sneaky, so that was fun for her to do. And as you see, there's 3 windows. Well, there's 4 windows outside of the house. But in here you can only see 3 because one's hidden in a closet, so you can't really see it.
Oh, okay.
And the closet is behind the bed frame. They wanted to keep their valuables close where they were sleeping, so no robbers or robber barons could steal it and take them. So they'd keep them behind their head. So if somebody was breaking into that closet, they'd hear it and alert them right away.
If there are any questions, I can try my best to answer them.
No, but I'm just thinking on a hot day like today, and the way you ladies are dressed, men don't be dressed like that and do the cooking and do all the things that
And
the
they don't
women did
have
back then.
fans, and they don't
Right,
have like air
right.
conditioning.
Oh my goodness.
There's
Oh,
probably more windows. Our windows don't really open, but maybe
Yeah.
their windows were a little more efficient.
maybe, yeah,
Still.
yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah, definitely.
If you don't have any more questions, you can go downstairs to the living room.
My favorite room in the house, actually, because it's kind of interactive and I can let you use the cardboard boards, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
So the Martins made some money from this. They made most of their money from their farm, but they made some of their money from this as well. So what they would do is they'd take their sheep and they would shave them, and then they would take the wool and they would wash it in a bucket with some water, and then they would put it on these things called cardboard boards. So as you can see, the wool is on it, and they would go opposite of each other to take out all the knots. And then once it was done, they would go the same way, take it off, and they would repeat that process for about 4 or 5 times to make sure they have really quality things. Would you like to try it?
sure.
Here you go. You can just go opposite of it.
I'll tell you.
That, they'd put it onto this walking wheel, and they'd put it right about here, and they would string it right onto the wheel.
Right.
They'd take a big step, that's why it's called the walking wheel, and it would spin until it turned into a nice string. And then they put it onto the loom, which I'll show you how to use momentarily. So then they would go to the loom over here. And I don't know if you guys remember seeing that from the other room,
Yes.
but that was actually made on this loom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I've been making this piece since last year, along with a few other people now and then, but this has been the same from last July. So I'm going to the right now, so I'm going to press down on the right pedal. And I'm going to pull up on here, and I'm going to push this big board back. I'm then going to take my shuttle and make sure this is about the length of this, and I'm going to shoot it through this opening. Just like so. Reach in, I'm going to grab it on this side. Pull it through, not too much, because then it pulls on this side. And then you slam this back, and I just made a whole section right there. Is that cool? And then I'm going to go to the left. Same thing, just press the left shuttle, bring it through. Shoot it through there. Slam it back. And it is now time to switch from red to white.
Right.
So what I would do here is I'm going to rip this. Take the scissors off. So I'm going to cut this red string right about here. And I switched out to the white shuttle, which is over here. And then I do the same thing. I just start it off. There's no need to tie anything or anything, because that's what all these strings are for that you can see. So I'm going to get a nice length. Going to the left, pull it back, shoot it through. Just like that. And slam it back, and that's how you start a new color. And that's the Martin house for you. Any questions?
Yeah.
No, it's unbelievable how tedious everything
yeah.
is.
Very.
Wow.